is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
I feel like many jazz hands there. And welcome to Right Night on Travis Tavern Talk. It is...
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, hello to everybody who is joining us there. We have Trin and Spacey Tracy. Thank you for that resubscribe with Twitch Prime. Much appreciated. Always love to see you, Twitch. And Cheesy Cal and John from Conquest Publishing. Thanks for joining us, guys. As I said, I am your host, Travis Sivart, and tonight I am going to pimp my kids' books because I feel that's appropriate language for such things. This one, I just published past week or so and finally got copies in. But those are written under Joe Wilson, as well as all kinds of other things that I've written. I'll put those away now, and let's pass the introductions to directly above me, Michael.
Hey everyone, my name's Michael Thompson. I am an independent author and illustrator of fantasy and superhero stories. One of my novels is Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters. It's a folkloric fantasy in the high seas about cryptids, sea monsters, and epic urban legends, and the harrowing sea captain who sees them. So check it out, really fun, dialogue-driven, cool stuff.
And then to Michael's, I guess, his left, our right, Aaron. He's just ahead of the game there. Just ahead.
Hi, I'm Aaron Kennedy. I've been a technical writer for about 25 years. I've published the book Ships of Valor, Book 1, Persona Non Grata, as well as some articles on military leadership and physical fitness and their interactions thereof. Yeah, that's about it.
Very good. Saving the best for last, Tempe.
Hi, I'm Tempe Wade. I'm the author of the Timely Revolution book series. It's a time travel fantasy adventure series that takes you back to 18th century America and weaves Revolutionary War history with Celtic lore and gives you a new magical way to look at things from the past.
Ooh, magical.
Yes.
Now, for all of our viewers, what are you guys reading or writing? Let us know in the chat so we can all follow along with your weekly escapades and achievements. So, this week's topic is engaging. Oh yeah, it's and Cheesy, do make sure you check out Tempe's website right there. It's an excellent book series, and she is roaring through it. But right, engaging the reader. Now the show is split into 2 hours. The first hour being the creative hour, the second hour being technical. But this is going to be a 2-hour topic, and we're going to attempt to put the creative topic or a creative material thoughts in the first hour and the technical in the second, but we might fail horribly. We'll see how it goes. So, or I might. They're all professionals. I am complete amateur.
Let's get like crazy now.
So my first
amateur,
thought,
one who loves.
One who loves?
Mm-hmm, that's what amateur means. Root word Amora.
Oh, guess that makes sense.
Word of the day.
Look
Word
at
of the
that
day.
right on. Okay, so when I think of engaging the viewer, I think I don't have enough money to buy a ring for all of them. Or reader. So, what do you guys think about, and how do we go about engaging our readers? Who's got some thoughts on this right out of the gate?
I do. I've got a couple, if that's okay.
Yeah?
Anytime I pick up a book, and I grabbed one of the ones because I like the author, the Terry Pratchett. This one happens to be part of his Discworld series.
Right.
He is great about getting you into the story immediately. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're where it's going to be. It might be a little prologue, but you instantly go into the mystery mode of, okay, what's going on? Who, what, where, when, why? And for a reader, it should be a little bit of a mystery as to, okay, what's happening next? What's going on here? Why am I reading? Not necessarily why am I reading this, because you want that disconnect, but you want them trying to figure things out as you're going, but you want to keep it just enough to where they can't predict it. where things kind of twist and turn along the path. When you pick up a high fantasy novel, you kind of have an idea of what's going to happen here. Where you pick up sci-fi novels, same kind of thing, westerns. There's these ideas, and Lester Dent, and I've shared this with Travis, he had a very simple pulp setup of new location, new villain, new thing. But he wrote like 40 friggin' books based off that concept. But every time he did it, it was a little bit different, and you never knew what you were getting at the very end, just what you were getting at the beginning. It's kind of like a great donut. It's a donut, you know it's going to be good, but you don't know what it's going to taste like until you put it in your mouth.
Okay. If I can jump in before anybody else does and say, Freedom in Spring said engaging readers is all about being unpredictable and exciting, which is exactly what Aaron was saying as that appeared on the screen. And Wordowin says there's been a few books where I wonder why I'm reading them, and that is exactly why we're going to talk about engaging the reader. And I didn't even think about this before we started. I asked that question. Maybe we should define what we each think it means to engage a reader instead of how you do it. Defining the term engaging the reader. And Cheesy, seriously, I don't know if you're a plant by Tempe, but it says, do you have any suggestions for a book to read about biography novel type that tells about a famous historical figure? Check out Tempe's work.
Yeah, I've got a few historical figures in there. George Washington, John Andre, Ben Talmadge. You get a little insight into a few of those people in my series.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pull the show away from the topic, but that was like just a perfect setup to mention Tempe's work again. And check that out. See, and don't forget, do you have on Amazon, you have the look inside thing set up?
I do.
Okay.
I do. The historical figures don't come into play until about midway through the first book, because I've got a setup where she's actually got to get back in time and get to meet them. But yeah, if you go to the website tempyway.com, there are excerpts from the other books in there, and little historical facts about some of the people that are in there as well. So you can check it out there.
4 out so far, and the 5th one with the editor. Is that correct?
This one is with Tar. She finally got through the first 2 paragraphs because I scared her too badly with them. And she messaged me and said she did get through them. So the 5th book should be out this summer, early this summer. So
exciting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, she mentions Tara. She's another one of our people. She's over at Dreampunk Press.
Yeah.
It's and by the way, Tempe, since you're talking, do you want to kind of define in your mind what it means engaging the reader?
Well, I mean, you've got to get them to read the book and not throw it down after the first 20 pages because they're bored. When I wrote the Timely series, I was concerned about that with the first book because I knew I was setting this up for a long series, and there's a lot of setup in book 1. She has to get back in time. She has to get her life set up before all this other stuff can start happening. And I was really concerned about that. People would put it down before they got to that part. So I had to throw some twists and turns in to kind of spice it up, to change things up a little bit. And that's what you have to do. You just have to throw the unexpected stuff in there to keep people coming back. And now I have people that tell me they'll sit down and read the first book in a day or two because they just couldn't put it down because, with the twists and turns that kept popping up in it. So.
And Michael, you haven't had a chance to talk yet. Do you want to define a little bit about what the term or phrase engaging the reader and then how you do it?
Sure. I like what Freedom in Spring said about being unpredictable and exciting, and he's a buddy of mine from college, so hey, thanks for dropping in. I appreciate it. I think my definition for engaging the reader would include anything that helps the reader forget that they're reading and keeps them fully immersed in the story.
Willful suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, as an experience.
Even better for when
that's what I'd say. And things that just draw you in general. So even a good cover and then a great first sentence is a great way to engage the reader. And then beyond that, it's just good pacing and describing things as they happen. That's what I would say. I really like the quote from Robert Frost, no tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. So you want to create that experience for yourself first and feel what you want your readers to feel as you're creating it.
Very good, very good. It's one of the things I love most about when reading a book is, and this has changed over the time of my life, especially as I have started writing and publishing. I've become much more critical about writers, about writing, about what I read. When I was in my teens, I had to finish any book I started, no matter how much I wasn't enjoying it. It was, I guess, an ADD thing or something like that. I just had to finish it. God forbid it was a series. Some people love Stephen Donaldson's White Gold Wielder, about a leper transported to a fantasy world and his wedding ring is magic, blah, blah, blah. I did not enjoy it, but I read all 6 because that's how I was set up. Since then, I've become more critical, and if I'm not caught, usually I give it 3 chapters. If you don't make it through 3 chapters, that book must really be dragging. But since starting to write and publish, I have now used good and bad writing to help learn. Help learn what works, what keeps my attention, or specifically what tears me away from a book. And there's some writers who I have really enjoyed years ago that now I have a hard time reading them because I realize certain things through my experiences. But today I was listening to an audiobook as I lit bonfires. And, well, singular, not multiple. Bonfire, singular. Brandon Sanderson. His, I don't even know the name of the series. It's Firefight Book 2. Steelheart was a Book 1. And I would get lost in it. I forgot that I was experiencing a book. And when when I lose myself so much that I cannot critique, that's an experience. That's a great book for me. And that says a lot. And that's what, as a writer, I want to aim for. I want to keep honing my craft till I can create that for me when I'm writing, but then secondary for my readers, when you can just get lost in it. Weirdoin, I am glad to hear you enjoyed them after the first 20%. I myself, I suffered through all 6 and didn't really enjoy any of them. But I was in my mid-teens at that time, and maybe now that I'm older, I would enjoy them more. Maybe now that I'm a leper, I would enjoy them more. I'm kidding. I totally probably would enjoy them even though I'm a leper. And by the way, just a social leper, not physical.
Well, you mentioned the 20. She mentions the 20%. Friggin', you mentioned not being able to get through there. One of the things that I ran into when writing Persona non grata is when I got to the editing phase, I ended up cutting out probably the first 15,000 words of the book to start it in a better spot. I saved all that work because it'll become the end of another book.
Interesting.
But right now, I think the total word count's right around 80,000 for that one. But it was at 100. But I realized that where I started the book logically in my head was not what was going to engage the reader. So I shifted all the way into like chapter 3 or 4, where things started happening, rather than this prologue, which, what's going on? Why do I care? All that stuff. And then Travis mentioned Brandon Sanderson. Brandon Sanderson's amazing because he trimmed down Robert Jordan to something that was palpable. Freaking, I liked Robert Jordan, but I gave up on him after like book 9 or 10.
Wheel of Time for anybody that doesn't know.
Yep, thank you. Because he was just, it wasn't that he was so verbose, it was just so information dense, and he suffered the the Boondocks syndrome.
Or Tolkien.
Where you've just introduced all these characters and you can't keep them all straight in your head. There's a reason that, like in comic books, a team will have like 6 to 8 primary characters because you can keep track of them. You focus in on one area, but you never forget who they all are. Whereas I just stopped caring about any of those characters. I wasn't engaged anymore because he just got them so deep in there. Yeah. And I realized he kind of had 3 stories going on, one for each of the boys. But we also ended up with 3 stories for each of the girls, and then all these little side snippets, and I just stopped reading it because I fell out of, not necessarily in love, just one of those, okay, what is going on here? But I ran into the same problem on the first book of the Wheel of Time, where the first 20% was slow. It was dry, and it wasn't until you got to kind of that inciting incident that things happened for me.
Okay.
That's a good term to introduce, the inciting incident. And that's something that movies, I think, you know, I've heard it a lot in the context of film, and in the context of books, it's good to like have action, like be something that just like slaps you into it. That was something when I was in high school and then in college when we talked about beginning pieces. That a good like a hack really is to just have action, because it immediately draws you in. If you start with momentum, then you're more likely to get swept up in it. So, you know, even if it's something simple, like World of the Orb, the first chapter starts with Marvin getting hit in the back of the head with a wad of paper. And so it's immediately, and every book is actually, and this is a fun fact that not a lot of people know, every book, at least the plan as of now, is to have them like in some sort of motion going forward.
Well, look at James Bond. There are 30 James Bond things, and they all start exactly the same. At the end of his last mission, where everything's happening, and then it dips, and then gives you the lead up.
Yeah.
So we always get that action scene right at the very beginning to get you engaged.
In a way, it's kind of like creating like the language of your own piece as well. And when you have multiple books, and then you have symbolism in those books that, you know, can not only be referenced to other works that exist outside your work, but that people can reference even more specifically, that you've sort of created a legend of terminology and a legend of meaning within your own work. That's a really cool thing. And it's like, oh, you know, when you read this guy's book, the color purple symbolizes this and stuff. So if you create your own legend for your own books, it's such a cool and interesting thing to do. So in my books, for instance, I like the color purple is sort of symbolic of otherworldly stuff, because starting with World of the Orb, the color of the orb. So anything that's sort of like beyond the natural, I try and have the color purple adjacent there. So it's my own language, storytelling language that I'm embedding.
Just so everybody knows, when you hear the bell, that's usually me letting folks know when they're done with their thought. I'm going to read some comments, and that's for the folks on the podcast as well as our live viewers. Word to Win says, for initial engagement, I try to have a nice starting sentence, a bit of mystery for them to be curious about.
Nice.
And not sure if I should mention it or not, but I also mentioned breasts in the first few paragraphs. It's magical. True story. And John of Conquest Publishing says, even with the New York Times bestseller we're doing as a comic, we had to move part of the story that was an action scene to the front.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it's something, and Michael, what you were talking there about seeing this in films, something I've been using to help with the pacing of my books, because if you look at Harbinger, the pacing, it doesn't carry. It starts with action and everything, but the pacing is not, they call it a beat sheet in movies,
yeah.
And authors use it too, and there's a few things I've done, which means starting each chapter with action, and ending each chapter with something that pushes momentum to the next chapter, whether it's a question or a cliffhanger or whatever. But yeah, looking at breaking up a book into 3 acts, Act 1, the first 25%, Act 3, the last 25%, and the midpoint being where your protagonists go from reactive to proactive. There's also the plot points and fall, and this is something, because I felt my pacing personally was off. Some readers liked it, but it didn't hold a lot of readers, and I base that on I guess basically the people that read it, most of them never gave any kind of response to it. And to me that says there's something better here. It didn't catch them enough to leave a review or come back to me and talk to me about it. You read Harbinger. perhaps saw exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, we want kind of that roller coaster philosophy where you're just okay, up, 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 up. But you gotta tempo it down as well. And looking back at the first version of Harbinger, we had a lot of quick spikes up, a lot of slow downs, and then spike up, and it would do that. So the tempo, it wasn't that the beats were not present, it was that the tempo wasn't quite there. It was like a carnival roller coaster instead of a theme park roller coaster.
Right.
And that's something I've changed up on mine too. When I did the Timely series, you know, I had a lot of setup. Like I said, I had to get everybody in place. But at the fantasy piece that I'm working on now, that I let the rest of you guys read, that just slams you right into it.
Yeah,
I mean,
you did a good job of starting with action in that.
Right.
Yeah,
and without context in a good way, so that you're asking questions, and laying out the rules for the world and for your magic system as well.
Yeah.
Laying the foundation for that. That's good.
Yeah, so this is a little bit different for me in a lot of ways. So I'm learning as I go on this one.
Well, I'd like to say we're all learning as we go, no matter how many books we've done. It's something I mentioned to each of you before we started the show. It's part of the reason I did this is because I do want to keep learning from other people and what works for them, which may or may not work for me. But
Well,
go ahead.
Well, that goes back to something you said earlier, and something I've been saying on the leadership front. My primary specialty for years is everybody you're gonna meet is gonna be an example for you. They may be an example of how to do things, or they may be an example of how not to do things. So you look back and you go, oh wow, the Myth series by Robert Asprin. That's a great set of novels in the comedic way of doing things. But if you read it from a critical eye, you go, oh, wow, look at all these things that don't quite work here. But for the time, it was amazing. If they tried to write the same novel today, it would fall flat on its face. And you run into that with a lot of different writers and things like that. And that critical eye that Travis talked about as well, I tend to be a lot more forgiving because I'm like, oh, wow, they put a lot of time and effort into doing this. No, it's not necessarily a good book, but does it deliver what it promises? And that's where I have that real, okay, this is not delivering what you asked for. If it totes itself as sci-fi and you end up with a fantasy instead, like Star Wars. Star Wars is a fantasy, or a Western, depending on your point of view. But once you realize, oh, that's actually what this is, it delivers it, and that's... I had asked Michael about this earlier. Which one was the worst Star Wars? He said Episode 8 for sure. And I'm like, shoot, one is bad, because you're not getting what we came to expect. It's not bad in its own right. It's just not good because it's not part of that same expectations or engaging the audience.
You know, another book I just recently finished, and I'm not going to name the author or the title because I'm criticizing it at this point in time. And by the way, I adore the author, and I've enjoyed his other works before. This actually felt like maybe it was something he wrote before he published his other stuff, and they went, do you have anything in the closet that you haven't dusted off recently? So yeah, it felt like that. And it delivered exactly what it promised, but there was too many cliches and predictabilities, and that was one of the criticisms. And by the way, a lot of what I read is via audiobook because I have 2-hour round trip. So audiobooks are just easier for me to get that reading in.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you guys after the show, but I did not enjoy the narrator at all. It was the worst part of the audiobook, and it's a person with a bit of a name to them. It's but yeah, if you guys are curious, mention that to me afterwards because I don't want to criticize it because, like I said, I adore this author.
We all know it was Samuel L. Jackson reading Samuel L. Jackson.
No, that'd be okay.
Listen here, mother.
That'd be okay.
What do you guys think when it comes to characters? What do you guys think is specifically engaging about a character in your guys' work?
Oh, well, I actually got. I listened to this one. A guy named Tim Jennison. He wrote. He did the movie Jennison's or Tim's Veneer, which is about painting. But he has a great quote that says, "If I know two things about a person and I can guess the third, I've lost all interest in them."
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so knowing two things and you would never guess the third is great. Like, oh, okay, well, you smoke pot. You friggin', you like bad food. Oh, yeah, I'm also a rocket scientist. What? Okay, wait a second. Tell me more.
Interesting.
We want to catch... we don't want them to be this... yes, we want them to be an archetype, but we don't want them to be a stereotype.
Okay.
Tempe?
Yeah, with my character in the Timely Revolution, Maggie Bishop, the main character, she's questioning life from the start. I mean, she's just gotten engaged in the first 2 paragraphs, and she was like, "Hey, man, I don't know about this.
Right.
Let me think about this." I think having somebody that's not sure of themselves, that's kind of learning as they go, questioning their own lives. And she was she just gotten engaged. She's on a beach. She just went to take a walk, and bam, next thing you know, she's in 1765. So, and I got some blowback from Tara when she edited the book the first time, and because she's like, "I think your character's a little too goody in the beginning," and she was a little bit, but she got into trouble later on. But there was a reason for that, and she saw that as she went. But yeah, you just have to, like you said, you just got to mix it up a little bit. You got to keep changing it up and throwing out stuff that people wouldn't expect. So
Yeah, I had heard a quote recently, and I don't remember who said it, but it was that to really impress your audience, you want to give them what they want in a way that they didn't expect. And I thought that was a good way to sum it up.
For me, I find flaws to be endearing.
Yeah.
If we look at a movie like Solo, I think one of the reasons it didn't appeal to the audience is because Han Solo, in episode 4, 5, and 6, he was a very flawed character. He was a womanizer, but not good at it. His ship was always breaking down. He was ill-tempered and sarcastic and bitter and mistrusting and only looking out for himself. Very flawed. And we adored the
he was the cynic compared to the optimist in the party.
Thank you, Tracy, for your bits. But if you go watch the movie Solo, he is a little too nice, a little too good, a little too optimistic, and he has no flaws. Sure, he fails, but that's not a flaw. That's circumstance.
Right.
So, and not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily have to be obvious flaws, but like what Tempe just mentioned with her book. Her character from page 1 is already doubting choices. That's a nice flaw. It makes them relatable.
Yep.
Or in an antagonist, you never have to make your antagonist likable, but you have to make them relatable. And their reasons behind what they're doing. If you ever go read, what's his name that wrote Red Dragon and Hannibal? I can't think of his name right this second. But if you read his books, where he gets into the mind of the serial killer, it's scary because suddenly you find yourself relating to this serial killer and you're understanding their motivations because he gets into their heads so well.
Thomas Harris, by the way.
Thank you very much. And these are the things that engage me with the character. And by the way, I am a totally character-driven watcher or reader.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't like your characters, I don't care about the story. Because the story is what's happening to the characters, and it's their being interwoven into it that matters to me, how it affects them. They are feeling the story for me, and I'm relating to their reactions and thoughts, etc. And if I can read a few comments here before I pass it on to whoever else wants to talk after this. Word says, not only does Solo not have flaws, but he keeps having these special skills that save his butt. Danny says, yeah, with the tragic backstory he has, definitely should have gone back to the Han Solo trilogy books. Han, agree, Danny. And then Danny also says, flaws are greater than perfection, otherwise boring. Yeah.
Well, there's an old term friggin' that goes back to the '60s in the Star Trek fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Mary Sue. Mary Sue was perfect in every way. She was the youngest ensign on the friggin' Enterprise. She interacted with all these people of power, whether it was Kirk or Spock or whatnot. But she didn't have any flaws, so people hated her. So it's kind of become a literary term of somebody that's too perfect.
It's kind of like the difference on Gilligan's Island between Marianne and Ginger.
Right.
You know, that stark difference between the two of them.
Could be why I like Marianne better. If you
Gary
guys,
Stu.
have you guys seen The Boys on Amazon Prime?
I've been
Yes.
wanting to. My friends
Okay.
have been getting on me to check it out. I haven't yet, though.
One of the characters is a Superman clone. And it gets into him later, and you're expecting it as a viewer because of the way the show is set up. You're expecting there to be flaws. But even somebody who comes off as perfect, when you foreshadow there's something dark there, there's something different, something deep, it's a beautiful thing, especially when they start to reveal these things, whether you predicted it or not. By the way, if I may, sorry again, jump over here to some comment. Word says, in my current project, the main character is revealed as being A, a gamer, B, a blackmailer, C, recently murdered. Okay, that is 3 facts that definitely makes you go, what?
All of the above.
Okay, who had something else to add to this? So I stopped talking.
Well, I mean, we talked about friggin' kind of the flawed character concept. People are flawed. What was it? Some of the best like villain type setups, the antagonist in there. The one that instantly came to mind when you were talking about that, when it came to relatability, was in Spider-Man: Homecoming. Michael Keaton plays, spoilers, the Vulture, but you are on his side 80% of the way there. You understand exactly why he did it. The government came in and swooped out his project, put his people out of business, and all that. So he's just a guy trying to make money as best he can in a system that's flawed. He's not a bad guy up until the very end when he sees somebody threatening what he views as his family. You are 100% on board with him. To that point.
Right.
And then you've got Peter, who we already know is flawed in his own way. Basically got daddy issues that's going on between Uncle Ben and Tony Stark and all that stuff. So he's got his own issues, and we love them both. They're these great villains. Whereas we go back and we look at some of the other villains that we aren't relatable. Your Darth Vaders. We know nothing about Darth Vader until the end of episode 5. Empire Strikes Back. We just don't know anything about him. All we know is he's a badass in a dark suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you said. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say it's a fine line to walk between those characters when you're trying to make them likable and make them the bad guy at the same time. That's a tough road to hoe there. And you kind of have to bop back and forth a little bit to make that work. And then at the end, and when the reader finishes it and they're conflicted, do I feel good? Do I feel bad for him, or do I not? So.
Well, something I read a comic called Something Positive every day. And it's not a positive comic by any stretch of the imagination. It just happens to be the name of it. But the main character, a guy named Davin, he puts on a play, but he wrote the villain, the antagonist, after his father. And his father asked him, well, why did you model him after me? Well, the villain's got to be the most interesting character there. Because if he's not, everything kind of falls on its face.
Mm.
Lex Luthor is far more interesting than Superman is. First off, because he's right. All these heroes are running. Well, no, all these heroes are running around Earth, and they're drawing all these other threats. There weren't these problems until Superman showed up, and he's literally a weapon of mass destruction that can run around and do all these things, and we couldn't stop him if we tried.
Yeah.
Batman's doing kind of the same thing. The Joker's more interesting than Batman. Batman can do everything. Batman can breathe in space. It doesn't matter. But the Joker, you don't know what he's going to do, but he's trying to tell this joke. Like, have you ever heard the story of Bobo the Clown? It's that kind of...
Going to the free show.
But, yeah, that kind of thing. We don't know what the joke is. It's in his head, and we're just trying to figure it out.
I'm still trying to figure out Bobo the Clown. I like, Danny over here says the villain equals the hero of their own story, and that's definitely true. You need to, and that's really a fun thing about writing a villain, is figuring out their logic, and taking sound logic or taking logic and warping it slightly, and then just creating the rules for that villain. That's a really fun exercise. And then lots of times, they may not be like, villain may not be the right word. They may just be kind of an antagonist, and like the antagonist in Winslow is just kind of the ideologically backward version of the titular character. So like Winslow is basically just like a being of pure intuition, and then so therefore the antagonist is this being of pure logic and stuff, and Winslow's way of going about things is just infuriating, obviously, and especially if he's always right, because how, and that creates conflict. But I like what you said earlier when you mentioned the Millennium Falcon and how it's always breaking, and I love that. That adds so much character to a thing, and it becomes a character itself.
One of the things that they kind of explained in one of the books after the revamp of Zahn's novels was that the Millennium Falcon's controlled by 3 different droid brains, and they bicker. Basically, the 3 droids are sabotaging each other's systems to keep this thing up and running.
That's pretty funny. That's interesting.
That's right. It's got its own conflict. That's the reason it always breaks down, because Droid A doesn't like Droid B or Droid C or whatever, and he never fixed that underlying issue.
Yeah, that's something that I often tell myself as I'm writing, that nothing can be easy for the characters. So like there was a scene in the first Winslow where John's in just a terrible place in his work, and so like even his chair is going to be against him, so even his chair is breaking, everything's breaking, the lights don't work, and it's just everything is just crap, so I don't know, it's funny to me. And like if you look at like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, and how like even the environment, it seems to be against Peter. That's something that I really liked and honed in on, and it really makes you that's something that's rather engaging, because it makes you root for the character. Is just always having a bad day, and it's true to life, because not everything's going to be on your side. You may have a terrible like swivel chair that's constantly depressing as you sit into it.
For example, 2020 is not.
2020, the memes from 2020 have been just absolutely amazing. Oh, have you seen the one where it's Tom and Jerry, and Tom has the saber, and he's pointing it, he's pressing it into Jerry's belly, and he's just sitting there all depressed, and it says aliens invading in May, like and then Jerry's just looking up like
whatever. What's
yeah.
one thing?
But I mean, we start talking about, you want these folks that are having the bad day. Michael Douglas, Falling Down, was a movie from the 90s, where it leads into this thing. It's just a normal guy, and the straw finally broke the camel's back. He's interesting because he's just a guy having a bad day, and we're following his actions along that path. He's a flawed character. he's a flawed character, but he's an everyman flawed character. And then you kind of get into what he's doing.
Yeah.
Or Sixth Sense.
Oh.
Ah,
There's an everyday guy.
Mm-hmm.
Or Unbreakable.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love a tragic villain. I love a villain that you go, I feel for this guy. I mean, he's wrong in what he's doing, but I get it. And in Falling Down...
Oh, go ahead.
In Falling Down, written slightly differently, that character could have been a villain instead of the hero. And there's been a few good movies like that where you're like, that was a villain story, but man, what was it I saw recently that...
The one I liked was Payback with Mel Gibson back in '99.
Okay.
I just want my money. He's a criminal, but we're following his story. He shoots the luggage, friggin', and it's there. Because he's not a good guy, but you are totally on his side because he got screwed at the very beginning. The Italian Job's another one. They're not good people. They're just trying to get their stuff back.
Right. Yeah, they're criminals. They're criminals.
Now,
Well-
I found myself, like, in the Timely series, I just like a really down and dirty, nasty bad guy. And it may just be the genre that I write, you know, because I've got a couple in here that are just real SOBs. And there's no getting around it.
There is nothing wrong with that, and I definitely use that as well. Actually, I'm trying to think, do I even use tragic villains at all? No, it's I like a black and white villain at times also. I guess I like them both. If I can read this real quick. Adam, good to see you. Adam says, villains that are in some way humanized always make the best ones. Don't get me wrong, some of the crazy, nonsensical ones are fun, but when you can relate to one to some extent, it can be powerful. Thanos comes to mind as a recent one. Thought he was a good villain. Definitely because you could look at his motives and go, I can see where he's coming from on that.
Well, he thinks he's right, and Thanos didn't necessarily do anything wrong. He saw an unsustainable situation that was spiraling out of control, and he viewed his method as the way to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that is like the Empire. The Empire did nothing wrong. Friggin', you've got this radicalized farm boy who blows up a planet twice. Is Luke Skywalker really a good guy in this thing?
Well, we always go back and forth watching movies here, and we'll look at something and go, okay, so how did Darth Vader convince all of these people to come join his side? It's because they thought he was on the right side too. It's just like that in the Bond movies.
Right.
The Bond guys have their own loyal people. Well, they think it's, you know, they believe that they're on the right side as well. You know, it's kind of a catch-22 there. So, because I'm always looking at the Bond characters going, how much do they have to pay you to, like, do what you do? You know, the goons. How much do you get paid for this?
Well,
Is there insurance? Do you know, does your family get paid off if you get killed over this? You know, it's strange. So.
Well, something I did in D&D campaigns when I was DMing is you kind of lead the characters around, and they started off as goody two shoes, but the road to evil is paved with stones of good intention, and eventually you just kind of drop the bomb on them with one of the NPCs going, "You think we're the good guys?" Because every D&D game is really about murder hobos. They live on the street, they kill people, take their stuff, and move to the next location. They're not necessarily good people.
But they don't necessarily believe what they're doing is bad, so...
Exactly.
You know, there's perspective from every side, so...
There we go. Danny says, but goons can have other motivations than just towing the villain perspective. Perhaps fear, or better of the two terrible choices as well. And back to the Star Wars thing with the Empire. The Empire brought order, safety, comfort to a whole galaxy.
Every measurable thing they did better. I was watching a movie called Mr. Right. It's Anna Kendrick and Sam Rockwell.
Okay.
He is an assassin, but as we kind of get into as he's going up against the villain of the story, he runs into one of their minions, and the minion's just like, "Look, man, I'm just here for a payday. Friggin', they offered me X money for the day. I'm here for the day." And it was one of those mutual. There wasn't necessarily a conflict between those two characters, other than the situation that they were placed in, which was great. You don't necessarily have to ideologically hate each other to be placed in a situation, which is kind of great in the storytelling concept. We go back to Star Wars because it's relatable.
Right.
Luke Skywalker hates Darth Vader and everything he stands for, but he came from an Empire planet. He was looking to join the Academy at the very beginning of the first movie. He was one of those guys until somebody else twisted his view just a little bit.
Right. Well, that and stormtroopers, killed his family.
Well, maybe they had it coming. Maybe they went outside without their masks on.
Fucking farmers. Oh, there we go. Here's a few comments, if I may. Word says, one of my readers told me one of my books was the first horror story she liked because she ended up sympathizing with the evil character and she hoped she'd win, which was, to her, horrific. And Danny says, there's actually one reason I couldn't continue to watch Dexter. Empathy. Too strong. So yeah, it's there's a situation where your good guy is doing horrible things for all the right reasons. So let's go back to the original topic, because we've wandered a bit. But so, how do we engage our readers? What tools, tricks, etc. do we use? What's in your toolbox, guys?
Tara gave it a name last week, but start late, finish early, where you're already in the action when you start whatever scene you're dealing with, and you finish it on a cliffhanger to where, oh, okay, what's happening next? They want to flip that page to get to the next one, which is it's a great tool in the toolbox. It's more on the technical side.
Yeah, Elizabeth.
Thank you. It was Elizabeth, not Tara. But it's a great tool to where you kind of start writing to the beats as well.
Right.
I like it because we see things in action, and I guess tonight's going to be a Star Wars night, but it starts off with the ship being boarded. We have no idea what's going on other than this giant ship is going to the other ship, sucks it up, and then a fight ensues. We're caught right in there.
That's right. Like hovering right behind your characters and putting them in some type of danger immediately demands resolution,
And by the way, if I can add to that, starting with action doesn't have to be a gunfight or any kind of physical violence. Starting with action, Michael mentioned a wad of paper to the back of the head. Tempe mentioned disruption in her main character's life. Walk on the beach, already doubting decisions that are in place. These are all ways to start with action that isn't a gunfight.
Oh, yeah. Persona non grata starts with a security door slamming on the main character's face. Or no, it just slams in front of him, and he's like, what the hell is going on? But the idea is that it's an event, it happens immediately, and you're going, okay, wait a second. This isn't a normal thing. Why is it happening? And we don't want normal, we want twists, we want changes. We want to go, oh, I thought it was going to go this way, but it didn't. So what happens next page?
I use a lot of internal conflict in the first book too, because my character is trying really hard not to change history, but at every turn that's not happening. Every time she tries to steer clear of changing something, she ends up inadvertently changing something. And mine is such a historical mix where I try to stay with history and events, and then having to throw that stuff in there and then flip it back around so it comes back around to the part where it actually happened. you know. So
Well,
it's
first rule
just
of
those twists and
prophecies.
turns.
Yeah.
The first rule of prophecy is anything you do to prevent a prophecy will bring about its fulfillment.
Right.
So it's gonna happen, but why did it happen that way? Oh, a great battle will be lost. Oh, well, yeah, I didn't say it was gonna be your side.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Michael?
Yeah.
I think there's, in terms of things that engage me, as I'm writing and when I'm reading, what I like is to have a sense of discovery and a feeling of discovery. It's a stronger experience than a feeling of being explained to. So leaving breadcrumbs, leaving clues and hints, and dropping those interesting nuggets, and then having those build up to this poetic return, where as the reader you click the pieces together as you go along, and then especially if your character is discovering something at the same rate, that's a really good way to do it. Like in World of the Orb, there's a sense of discovery around every corner because it's a brand new world that's being explored. In the new book that I'm writing, there's lots of stuff on the timeline. This is a very different book from what I've normally written, and I kind of had to do break the story like film and put the major story beats down, and then shuffle them in an alinear way. So this is very new for me. So that the revelation, as the character's reliving these moments in his past, that they line up in a story arc way, even though they happened in a different order chronologically.
Now,
So
is that
it's
something similar to Pulp Fiction?
Maybe, yeah. It is a linear, so that's something. I haven't watched Pulp Fiction recently, so that's something to check out for me.
Okay.
But yeah, order of revelation in this book is more important than chronological order. So it's something new, and it's making, and that's the interesting thing about the experience of writing, is that you have to become the type of writer that you need to be for whatever book you're writing. Yeah, constant evolution.
If I can read a quick comment here. John says, one of our stories has a horrific specter sucking the life out of someone on the splash page. So in comics, sometimes an interesting graphic helps get attention or set tempo. Now for me, it depends on which book I'm writing, is how I engage characters. If I'm Journal of a Stranger, which I'm working on book 2, it's getting deeper into this character. And that's actually, as much as it's a diary in a Robinson Crusoe type situation and feel, it's one that I have to go do the most back work on to give, because the pacing is not set up in the beat sheet way that I'm doing, for example, Silver and Smith, which the way I engage people in that is the James Bond type intro, which is also used in Indiana Jones and Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those start with the end of the last adventure. Except in Indiana Jones 3, where it's a flashback to his, origin story, if you will. And
right.
So
I like how he doesn't mention 4.
With good reason. But with Portals, those characters, it's immediately throwing them into this weird world and a very aggressive situation immediately. And then in that same first chapter, flashing back to what their day was like before they were taken from our world into this fantasy world. So you can kind of see the setup of, this is what they were dealing with, and this is what they're in now. But
Nice.
Once you're past that opening, to continue engaging my readers, it is the discovery of the character. And the story unfolding and the surprises of the story, your characters failing, even though they have the skill set to handle this, something else, the twist, that makes them fail, or it just gets worse, or as Michael said earlier, just nothing is working for them, no matter how skilled they are at whatever they're doing. So I think it depends for me what type of book I'm writing. There's not one singular tool. There is definitely a feel and a theme of, getting to know the people and relating to them, but also weaving that through events and scenes that are interesting, even just whether it's a new world or whether it's an exotic location or a common location with something out of the ordinary happening.
Well, I mean, what kind of immediately popped to mind for me when you were talking about that was Quantum Leap and the TV show Sliders.
Mm-hmm.
They, as you're jumping from one to the next, it kind of creates the doorway break for you, and you're instantly into the next adventure where you're like, okay, what's going on here? Which works. I mean, there's a reason there's that format,
right?
That kind of exists, and why recreate the wheel if we don't have to, in some ways.
Right. So we have a couple minutes left in the creative hour. Anybody have any kind of wrap up thoughts about the creative side of engaging a reader? Then we'll move into the technical side.
Let's see.
And if not, we could just move right into the technical side. Let's see if I had any notes. That's a good idea. No, I think I said everything I took notes on.
So did I.
We're all good. Let's go to the technical side. It should be an easy segue into that. And I think in this one, I also want to encourage us not only into whatever technical side of writing, which we mentioned one or two things of this, but also face-to-face engaging your reader. So when you're at a convention or an event or in the post office, as some of us have had experiences. And by the way...
Hey, whatever works. A book sale's a book sale.
Absolutely.
Exactly, yes.
I've been mentioning them at work, and people that I work with are going on Amazon to look at them and purchase them. And I'm going to be bringing some in next week once I get my final delivery of all of them. Word says sometimes the quickest engagement is the title. There's a good technical point to start with.
Yes,
the title.
Is. Very smart.
Anybody?
Well, I mean, you and I ran into this issue where, me and Travis, that is, where our title doesn't necessarily convey something instantly. Whereas, go back to Star Wars, A New Hope, or just a Star Wars. Okay,
depending what year it is.
That says what's going on. It's a space fantasy. Okay, we're cool. Whereas persona non grata, it's a Latin term, or friggin' harbinger. You don't know what the harbinger is for a while, and that's where we got. Whereas Michael and Tempe both do this great. You look at her book, you see the thing, and you're like, okay, this is historical in some way. Thank you. Whereas Michael, between the cover art and the title of his book, you got a pretty good idea of what you're getting.
Hold it up, Mike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like with mine, it goes back to the Revolutionary War, and she's thrown back in time, a timely revolution. But I have a tagline on here that says, and it's part of a thing that she finds and reads, and it says, "A step in time one must make to correct a wrong in human fate."
Nice.
So that's the tagline on the front of that, to try to pull people in with that.
A little bit of slant rhyme in there.
Yeah.
Man, I love slant rhyme. It's in Star Wars too. Star Wars, where your mouth is held in a similar spot. I love rhyme. Subconsciously, I used to World of the Orb and Winslow Hoffner's Incredible Encounters.
Well, what was it? Friggin' the Demon Etrigan. Friggin' from DC Comics, he spoke in rhyme because it was a bit of power. The original rap battles were Norse because people could rhyme and go there. Loki participated in rap battles.
How interesting.
Right. That's where it comes from. No, don't get me wrong. He also tied his lower bits to the horns of a goat for whatever
Haven't
purpose.
We all at some time. That's not special.
Look, we all don't live it out in the country, Travis. So,
See,
that might be just a little bit unusual.
I've done similar things with some of my book titles, not all of them.
Oh, okay.
Not the goat and the horn things, but just whether it's alliteration or like etheric elements has a similar mouth movement.
Yeah, it's a good sound.
Well, all of my rhyme stuff is done by by Finn, who's the king of the Fae, and I make it a point to point out how bad his rhyming and his poetry is. Every time he comes up with something else, everybody's making a remark about the bad poetry. So, just kind of make it a running joke.
Well, you can have those though. What was it? The Black Sword series. One of the characters, whenever he's introduced, they always introduce him with the same leading paragraph. They describe him as he appears, and you're like, okay, why are they doing this? But it's one of those, oh, okay, this is how he enters a scene. It's kind of like a movie using specific music to set the tone or set an introduction to a character as they're appearing. In Hamilton, the stage spins one way when some things are happening. It spins the other way when other things are happening, and it creates this subliminal effect that's great. But it's a way to engage the reader on a technical level.
What are your favorite taglines, be it movie or book? Do you have any?
Oh, gosh.
No.
I can't think of off the top of my head.
Exactly. I don't remember taglines.
I've got one.
Go for it.
And then I have something here to comment on, but go on.
All right. Army of Darkness. Yeah. It's trapped in time, surrounded by evil, low on gas.
Ah!
Yeah. Good.
Like that.
Tracy says, I think the blurb on the back of the book also makes people want to read it. And then Danny says, titles are the hardest part of my writing process. If I could take a moment to comment on both these things and then toss it around the room here. First thing, let's talk about titles. Because I was very bad at titles. Which, over the past 7-8 years, creating titles for Talk of the Tavern or Write Night, and these guys have seen me rework titles for the shows to make them more interesting and teasing and everything. Here's the bottom line. If you write the blurb on the back, take that blurb and shorten it to one sentence. And then shorten that one sentence to 3 to 5 words. Your title should give a clue what's inside your book. It should essentially summarize it without giving away the ending. And that's very difficult to do, because at the same time it has to be clickbait. Just
I was going to say, it doesn't necessarily be a summary, but I want it to be to set the expectations,
right.
A preview, if you will.
There we go. That's why I say without giving out the ending. So yeah, you're defining it a bit better. And the title makes people read the blurb, and the blurb makes it, well, the cover might catch the eye, the title makes you read the blurb makes you read the first page carries the rest of the book. Your editing will make them read the second book. Get a good editor. Nice. Okay. There we go. We're just throwing all out these interesting titles. Okay, who else has some stuff to say on titles and blurbs?
Blurb.
Oh, go ahead. Go.
The blurbs on the back of the cover are the worst for me, because I've tried to really, give a good explanations of the books up through the first 4. For number 5, I'm going to have one sentence on the back of the book. And It's going to be, one stranger will change it all. And that's going to be all that I'm going to have on the back of that book.
Cool.
So
I think that for a lot of people, it's really hard, because to write a good blurb, you need to get out of the mindset of the creator and be in the mindset of someone who's never seen the work before in their life.
On that note, on the technical side, or for those of us that went to college and whatnot, or attended college instead of just went to college, your blurb is your abstract.
Yeah.
It's a quick, down and dirty, oh, this is what this is about. It doesn't give you the information. It doesn't say anything. Or you're like, oh, okay, we're studying this and this. One of the best blurbs that I ever heard was, it's like Buffy the Vampire Slayer meets the Golden Girls.
Right.
and it was basically these grandma bikers running around killing monsters. But it's a great blurb.
It is.
Can I interject really quickly there? Just since you mentioned Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I learned something this week that blew my mind. Do you know Dolly Parton produced that secretly?
Yes.
Just found that out. How awesome is that?
It is awesome.
What was it? Lucy did Star Trek. Yeah, she felt that it needed to be on television, so she paid for it.
Interesting. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
You said Buffy. I immediately thought of Dolly Parton. I'm like, makes me love her even more.
Well, no, you got to have these matrons and Patreons and visit Travis's Patreon site.
If I can recommend, if you guys have problems writing your own blurb, ask your editor or your best beta reader to write your blurb for you. That way it takes you out of it. And if you have an editor you can work with, then quite often they're willing to do that, because as the editor, they know what's going to draw people in from a different perspective than what you think is important. Which sometimes we're not the ones that know our books the best.
Well, on that note, friggin', when writing an article, I do not write the title.
Right.
I write a blurb saying kind of what it's about, but the editor actually writes the titles. And you can see that in newspapers. Yep. Somebody writes the article, somebody else wrote the title, because the headline is clickbait.
Right.
It's designed to get you to read it.
I had that same situation when I was a reporter. I kept on writing the titles, and then I was told, oh, the editor writes the titles. I'm like, okay. Then I saw the titles the editor was writing, and how they triggered, like, the wrong idea. I actually have one pinned to the wall where they just...
But triggering the wrong idea isn't necessarily bad when you're in that format, because you're trying to get them to read.
Yeah, they put... It was about food pantries, and they made the title and misspelled pantry, so it said Food Panties Heroes.
Oh, boy. I remember that. What? So much better. I remember. So much better of an article. I don't care what you said in it. Tell me about food panties.
Oh.
Are we talking like roll-ups? Or are we talking like...
If I could go back to this here, Word says, one of my beta reader questions is now, if you were to write a 3-sentence summary of this, what would it be?
And that's smart.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't even have a beta reader questionnaire, but that's a great idea. And before
I'd actually put that as your last question.
Very good.
And if I can go up here and read, hold on, Danny's statement there. Yep, as writers, we tend to want to share the really cool things in the blurb, but it's not high level enough. Someone not as in the weeds with it further away can more easily tell you what your book's about. Here's what I found, Danny. I want to put, if I'm writing a Harbinger, for example, 5 primary characters. I wanted to put each of their names and each of their races and what they do in the blurb. I already have a paragraph with just that. Nobody cares. Get them. Why do they want to read this book? Those names, the fact that they're a major, whatever, doesn't actually matter when you have 5 characters. So that's why, as a writer, somebody else's point of view of going, no, you have this and this and this, is helpful.
Right. I would, when I was about to release World of the Orb, when I was coming out of college, something that was really the greatest thing when it came to me developing my pitch for World of the Orb was participating in the Twitter pitch party, and it was called SFF Pit. And the challenge was to write something, and I've mentioned this like a few episodes back, was to write a pitch for your book that would make someone want to read it in only the characters that Twitter allows. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly you're very restricted, and that breeds a lot of creativity. And looking at what other people did, and Aaron, when you mentioned pitches, you mentioned the format. It's like this plus this, so that's something that immediately puts the idea in the person's head. And then from the experience of writing that, I condensed my favorite pitches into the blurb that went on the back of the book. Then, in person, when I'm trying to engage people enough to pick up the book and buy it, I would have to reverse engineer it so that it would be verbally a good verbal interpersonal pitch to get someone to hold it and look at it and decide maybe to buy it. And that was developed even further just by watching people's reactions to what I was saying. And so that's how I condensed certain buzzwords out of just watching people's expressions and seeing where their faces lit up and what was most interesting to them. And so that's something that I would encourage y'all to do if you want to like really hone your pitching muscles.
Active listening is very important, and that also includes watching them. By the way, John says I like to ask a question with my blurb.
Yeah.
Which is a great way to engage a reader.
Asking a question or writing something that would make them ask a question within their head, and we raise questions. That's exactly right, Travis. You've mentioned that many times about raising questions.
So
something.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Nope.
Something Michael had mentioned was the this plus this format, and I hadn't thought about it that way. But the cool part about that is, you get. If I mention Buffy the Vampire Slayer, oh, I'm interested in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If I mention Golden Girls, I'm interested in Golden Girls. Now, you've now got two different audiences that you're working with, but you've also got the combination audience, or, okay, well, I'm just apathetic to this, but I still like this.
Right.
Or, I don't necessarily like this, but maybe this is a different twist on it that I can really get into. You're expanding your audience when you add these iterations or these adaptations into this.
Yeah.
Which brings out the audience that you want. But going back a bit, imagine your book is just the cover at a movie theater and you haven't seen the preview yet.
This is
what's going to get them in there. Simon Pegg, I think it was, he has a great interview talking about seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time. There was no preview for it, didn't exist. He goes in there and then he's trying to convey all this information back to his mom because he was so excited for going in blind. I actually went into The Matrix blind, which changes the entire tone of the movie because you don't know anything about bullet time or anything like that.
Interesting.
Which ends up being this great story. But your reader's going to walk into your book mostly blind, based on your cover, based on your blurb, and based on your title. What sounds interesting? And in the Netflix era, think about what would be displayed there. You got a great cover, you got a title, and you've got this little tiny blurb as to why you should watch this.
That's a perfect thing to look at, to see how they even like retroactively how they're pitching like existing properties. These things that that like Friends that everyone knows about. It's like, what's their pitch for Friends? It's really interesting, and it's like and you see how much information they're able to get into one short sentence.
Well, Wizard of Oz.
It's really an interesting puzzle. So,
Wizard of Oz. Girl kills first person she meets in new land, then joins three friends and kills her sister.
Yeah, it's true.
Am I the only one that hated that movie?
Back.
Okay. Am I the only one that hates that movie?
It was groundbreaking for its time, but after you've seen it the 500th time, never-ending story. I despise that movie. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it too many times.
I've never seen it because I don't have the time for that kind of story.
Right.
Wizard of Oz.
You're already writing one, right?
Wizard of Oz was a story I never got into as a kid. I just never liked it, never could sit down and watch the whole thing. And then, they would put it on twice a year, and that would take up one of the 3 channels that you had to watch. And I just hated them. And even now when I see it come on, I'm like, click, click, click. Get through it, get away from it as fast as I can.
You ever read the books?
No.
I hated the books because Dorothy was a spoiled little snot. Annoyed the hell out of me. It's the kind of kid you want to beat. It's a millennial. It's what we call a millennial now, but I point at older books like this because this was written over a century ago. No, this is not something new. This has been around. Human beings are...
Well, there's a book called The Pendulum, which talks about the swaying from the me generation to the we generation back to the me generation, and it's on a 40-year cycle. in the Western world, we're currently swaying into the we generation, whereas in the Eastern world, they're swaying into the me generation right now. So the millennial concept, it's just a generation there, whereas the X's and the Y's and the Z's and the baby boomers and blah, 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 it's repetitive patterns.
Yeah. Yeah, I was too busy reading Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew growing up. That's what I read.
By the way, if I may, there is a new Nancy Drew movie out with the young lady who was in It, Chapter 2, I guess, or Chapter 1.
Okay, the redhead one?
Yeah. Fun, interesting, etc. And do you know when Nancy Drew was first published?
Oh, God, like 30s?
Like 1918, I think it was.
Was that early?
Wow.
Yeah, it was like World War I era. And I could be wrong. Feel free to Google it. But yeah, Andrea and I, after watching the most current movie, did Google it. And I'm like, been around that long? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I grew up. Of course, I lived out in the middle of nowhere, and the only way I got books was when the bookmobile came through once a week, and once every 2 weeks, and we had to drive to the neighbor's house to meet the bookmobile. That's how far we lived in.
Now, 1930s is their publication date, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't set a couple
probably,
years before
I
that.
would go with that as opposed to what I said. Tempe, do you remember the smell of the bookmobile?
Yeah.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. It's a little different from a library, but it still had that booky smell. And
yeah, the bookmobile was a lifeline for me as a kid because, you know, I grew up out in the middle of nowhere. I had 4 older brothers. I was the youngest, and I was by myself a lot. So that was a lifesaver for me.
Wow, I remember the book. We didn't have the bookmobile, but we had the in-school classroom like twice a year where they figured, okay, they just shut down the library, set everything up, and your parents gave you like $5.
That was the Scholastic Book Fair. That was another delight.
I had those.
Oh, I would drool over the little 3-4 page booklet and just beg for books. And John says, "Do you mean the book wagon?"
When I was really young, and I had decided that I wanted to be an author when I grew up. My dream was to be in one of those flyers, one of those like book wish lists where you could circle the book you want. That's what we did. We got these little magazines, and then you could circle like all the things that you want. They had all sorts of crazy stuff. So that was one of my biggest dreams. And I kind of affected that style when I do school talks now. I have a book wish list that kids can put checks next to what they want.
Oh shoot, you would have loved the Sears catalog.
And Michael, it's different now because when you're a parent and your kids come home with those things and you
see the
this
prices,
long list of books that they want, it's like.
I'm sure, but I don't know. It's just such a magical feeling for me when they had those. It had a little description of the book and the cover of the book, and it's like, oh, and then you would get we got boxes. There's a big box that would show up on your desk depending on how much you got.
Yeah.
There was something that was in the publishing industry for years was the little preview magazines to make the determination. And John from Conquest, publishing in freaking Jersey, Card and Comics probably knows, very familiar with the little magazine. Says, okay, this is what's coming out this coming month. How many do you want to order? How interesting does it look? Where's it going to go?
Yeah.
And it's engaging the gatekeeper to the reader, because if the cover doesn't look interesting, I'm only going to pick up 3 of them. But if it's a really cool piece by an artist, let me pick up 10 of these. People are going to buy them.
It's another tangent. How many of us as kids were in a book club? And when I say as kids, I mean like elementary school and forward. My mother would enroll me in book clubs. And the way book clubs worked back then, and I think Tempe, Aaron, you guys might remember these as a kid and then as an adult for your own kids, because you get like the Disney books or the Golden books or whatever. And they would send you like 1 or 2 a month. And then at a certain point in time, they'd send you all 24 that remained in a big box.
No, I didn't get that, but Dolly Parton's got something for that for like the first 5 years of a kid's life. She'll send a book a month or something to that effect.
Yeah, I heard of that.
Oh, that's awesome.
I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
It's a program.
Yeah, I remember those books, Travis. They were I believe they were Disney books. I vaguely remember them. But yeah, you get like one a month or one every couple of months or something like that until they shut the subscription down. Wow. It was like the CD of the month club or the tape of the month club or something like that.
These here, back in that day, they hadn't quite caught on to the forever concept of the subscription. So these would be, and I remember like Leo the Lop and Serendipity. This was one particular series of books. And then the Disney books. And I was such an avid reader, my mother couldn't just give me one a month because I'd be back before an hour had passed, finished. And they were kids' books, so they'd be like a picture on one page and then maybe a paragraph on the other page, and I would just devour them. And I never folded pages, I never colored in them, I didn't write my name in them. I'd just always been a book fiend. And when she got that big box of final books, I happened to see it. And I'm like, can I? And she's like, no, you get one a month. And I'm like, soon enough, she's like, just here's the rest of the books. And there I was in my room for the next 3 days just reading books. And then I'm like, I'm done.
Well, we run into that as authors, too, where probably Tempe more than the rest of us. When's your next book coming out? When's it coming out? Can I have it? Can I be a beta reader for it?
I've got so many people that message me going, do you need a proofreader? Do you need a beta reader? I just want to read the book before anybody else does. I'm like,
That's
no.
good.
Nice.
Good position to be in. I mean, I read Jim Butcher, the Dresden novels, and he had a 2-3 year hiatus between the last book and the next two that are coming out this year. Just life got in the way, and there's kind of this expectation, but where you're engaging the readers and you got to go, okay, well, the next one's coming out soon, TM.
As long as it's not George R. R. Martin soon.
That dude's going to die before it happens.
You know what? He's lost my interest because he's taking so long, and that's a problem. When you take 6 to 7 years between books, why don't you just pass it on to a ghostwriter, make the money off of it, and get your fans what they want, because now I just don't care anymore. Not to mention
when the TV show passed him up, they completed the TV show from the time he wrote the last book till the current one, and I'm not speaking ill of it. It's just a case of you get to see a different ending that's on the TV than that's going to happen in the book. Which one's now the adaptation?
I'm having that problem with Expanse. Mind you, Expanse is not cut up to the books, but they have changed it enough. It's a separate story now. It's just totally a different story. Okay, back to engaging readers, if everybody's okay with that. Let's flip it back to that. And let's shift over. We've mentioned blurbs, we've mentioned titles. What about interacting in person? And I don't know if we should make Michael go first, because I think he's the best of us at this, or if we should make him go last. How about we start with Tempe? Because I know you've had a table with your Purveyor of Unusual for years now. So you've been interacting with customers, but what about the books, and how's it work?
I'm horrible with the books. I'm absolutely horrible with the books. I can talk prop work all day long, but when it comes to books at a table, I'm horrible at it. That's why I had a banner actually printed up that tells the breakdown of the first book. It's kind of a what do you call it?
Like a sandwich board?
Yeah, exactly. Where people can actually read it at conventions, and it gives a description of the book, and it's big enough that they can stand back and read it, so they don't have to come over to me, because people at conventions tend to be a little bit shy sometimes.
I am.
A little bit standoffish, yeah. And they're like, oh, I might be interested in that, but I don't want to go talk to anyone. So I put that up, and I notice it gets a lot of traffic. People come over and read it, and then they'll inch over and start talking about it. So.
Well, I think that what that goes on is none of us want a hard sell. We don't want to walk into Best Buy or into a freaking AT&T store and get sold a new phone. The one we got works fine. Whereas if you kind of set up the board, it's like, oh, okay, I can look at it, and then I can ask about this one, rather than get pushed into this lane.
Right. And it's easier for me because I get tongue-tied when I'm talking to people. Even on the show, I get tongue-tied, as I just did. But yeah, it's easier for me. It's easier for them. But the books are a hard sell for me, and I don't know why that is, but they are. It's just hard for me to do. And I can talk to anybody about anything. As you guys well know, I can talk to anybody about anything.
Except your books.
Except my books.
So what about you, Aaron?
Well, I figured out, I came up with a great business plan. I'm just going to hire Michael to do it. I've already talked to your manager, and she said, no problem. This is our fee. I'm like, you realize I don't make any money? And she's like, neither does he. So
My people will talk to your people.
That's exactly it. Now, when talking about it, it's one of those, hit something familiar and twist it. Persona non grata is Odysseus in space.
Great pitch.
Simple, to the point. And then I go, oh, okay. And I'm like, hey, friggin', one of the things that we always run into from the military side, engaging military people, is they always talk about the culture shock going into the military, but never the culture shock reintegrating back into society. And that's what this book is about. It's a reintegration using a pulp story.
All right.
But like I said, I'm just gonna I'm gonna sell my friggin' marketing to Michael. I'm gonna have him do my cover. I'm gonna have I'll have Tempe do the title, and then I'll have Travis write the blurb, and then I just gotta find somebody to actually write the book. That's the trick.
With all powers combined.
Our powers combined.
I'll forward the head.
Shaped like a book.
For me, when I'm in an event type situation, I've always hated a hard sell, whether it's giving or receiving. So what I've done is, of course, the covers can draw people in, but I started getting like bookmark type pieces of paper, basically cardstock cut to bookmark size, and on top of it I would put for example, Steampunk for Simpletons. What did I put in for that? Of course I didn't need steampunk. I put social DIY and then something else about it, basically culture. Above Harbinger I put epic fantasy. Above etheric elements I put steampunk anthology. So basically at a glance they have the cover, then they have a genre. So walking along and looking at the books without me ever saying anything, because we all hit that, let me know if you need anything or have any questions. Oh my God, we know that's why you're behind the damn table. But when we're behind the table, we're going to say that shit anyway, just to open up the conversation if they want to have one.
Well, because we're bored out of our skull just sitting there staring.
Or perhaps we don't actually want to talk to these people. Just buy my book without a word, I'm good. Depending on our day. And really, it kind of seems to be one extreme or the other. There's very little in between where, whatever. It's like, I'm bored.
On the third day of a convention, it's like, just buy it. Come on, just buy
I'm not talking to anybody.
Well, what you ought to do is you say everything starts off at cover value, and then you add 25% on day two. They're like, what? Oh my God. Well, you know what? I'll discount it down to you for friggin' the... and then on day three, 50 plus 50%. Why is it more expensive today? Because I'm running out of copies. Don't you know the law of supply and demand?
There you go. There you go. It sounds like a plan.
Oh boy.
I had one friend who he published his first book. He went to a convention to sell his book on a table, and he bought like 150 copies with him.
Oh no.
And he sold like 120 or 130.
Wow.
I know. Killed me.
Good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm like, how? Now, just
sounds like you almost broke even.
That's Robert, if anybody knows him. He plays Gander Snitch the Goblin. Michael had a table next to him 2 years ago at MorrisCon.
Oh, yeah.
But he would dress as his character, who the book was about, and sell it as the character. So, and he's used to doing shows as this character, so he had something that the rest of us don't really do. It's but yeah, that's why. Talk about engaging your reader when they walk up to your table. So Michael, let's just turn over the last half hour to you. Because now, for anybody that doesn't know Michael, if you haven't seen him at a convention, this guy is amazing. He is low pressure, but high engagement. But every time he does talk to somebody, if you know him or you watch him long enough, you realize every time he does engage somebody, he is attempting to sell a book. And I tell you what, I guess, and Mike, correct me on these numbers if you want, I would say out of talking to 10 people, probably 9 talk to him. Probably 7 end up holding a book, and then I'll let him fill us in on how many people walk away with a book.
Yeah, if I have like a constant flow of people, then I can sell about like 10 an hour. If it's like really good traffic, and you got people who think it depends on who's there. But yeah, I did the breakdown at one point, but I don't remember. But yeah, the key. Okay, so I'm gonna peel back the curtain. I'm gonna tell you everything I do, and I'll try and do a pitch for you guys, a digital pitch. So step 1, have a nice clean table with engaging elements. You don't want it to be too clean. You don't want people to be what's the word?
Overwhelmed.
Put like so clean that they don't want to touch anything. You want if it's so beautiful that they don't want to like come and pick up stuff, then that's a problem too. So you want to have
be functional.
Function, yeah. So I have
user friendly.
Yeah, user friendly. So I've got display copies. I have then I have stacks of the books behind. So that's work for me, and I'm handing the books out. The first thing that I do after you have this table and you want to have good energy and you want to be an absolute fanboy or fangirl for your stuff. You see them like a huge fanboy here based on my background. So I'm channeling all that energy and being my #1 fan of my own books. So that's
the hardest thing for us to do, for most writers to do.
So you want to love it so much that you want to success for you means sharing the experience that you love with as many people as possible. I have a bunch of free bookmarks on my table, and the first thing I do is I say, hey, would you like a free bookmark? And it draws people in. If they're a little bit far away, they're getting something, they take the bookmark, and a conversation can start there. And then I say, I'm an independent author, if that's not obvious already, depending on the setting. Can I introduce you to one of my books? And then they would say sure, and then I would like let them pick, or I would just hold up one and just try and guess, just go off of energy and think and try and guess which one they like the most. So I would say this is World of the Orb, and then I would give the pitch, and I'd say it's about 2 best friends on a field trip to the Museum of Natural History who sneak away from the group and break the one rule, which is not to go in the artifact room, and definitely not to touch the orb. And at this point, I would pick up or touch the orb. I don't have it, so I'm using stress ball. But I have that on the table. And when they do, they're zapped and cast headlong into an alternate world of monsters, myths, and magic that sets them on an epic, harrowing treasure hunt to find Earth again. And I would put it in their hand and then let them look at it and talk to them a little bit more. I have a couple other pseudo half pitches that I do that can help start conversation as well. And and then if they're wearing a shirt, if this is like at a convention where there's a lot of people who are fans themselves, and if they're wearing a shirt that's if it's like a Star Wars shirt, then I would say, hey, if you like the creatures of Star Wars, there's really cool extraterrestrial feeling animals, and I would lay on the otherworldly aspect of the book, and I would kind of connect it to whatever I see that they're they have existing fandom in that would match what I'm trying to sell. So that's how it begins.
Why don't you mention your pictures?
The pictures for
that you do.
Oh yeah, like I would especially mention like for Winslow that I do the illustrations in this as well.
Pictures with the people.
Oh yeah, so that's a great thing. So I would call over cosplayers. So if this is at a convention, there's lots of cosplayers and they're expressing their fandom. So something that we started doing, which really in the first RavenCon where I met you, Travis, is I have the orb here, and it's like a light metal hollow garden gazing ball, but it's approximately similar enough to the orb. And so I take pictures of the cosplayers holding the orb, and they just automatically get into that mystical stance, and it's great. And so during or after the event, I create an album with all of these amazing characters holding the orb, and that was really cool. That was a really cool way to engage, because and if they had handles, then I'd tag them. I'd take a note. I'd like write it on a piece of paper and take a picture of it in my phone, so I would know what corresponds with what, and then especially if it would be coming way later, so then I would at them, and it was cool. So I have a lot of like cosplayer followers from all these conventions that I've gone to, and it's cool seeing them still hang around, and lots of them bought the book, and it's cool. So then you have people who are fans of cosplay and who are fans of whatever they're cosplaying as coming in, and it's a merging of audiences, and it's really cool. So yeah.
Look at him looking away, being all shy now. What are you? Oh, you got your ball. There we go.
Hey, here's the orb.
Hey, I can see myself in it.
Oh, look at these. Okay, so this is it sits on a stand like this, and then we have Giganteus from Winslow.
I haven't seen him yet.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is Giganteus. As you can see, that's the arm there lifting up, going toward the Sienna in the middle. So this was great. Everyone's like, I've had a lot of people say, "Is this for sale?" And then a lot of people saying, "Did you make this?" And no, the secret is this is from an aquarium store. But what was great about this guy was that he's in the correct color, this kind of patinaed gold look, which Giganteus in the finale of Winslow affects this gold look, which is symbolic in so many ways.
You ought to start selling him. Friggin' buy a couple, 3. Just don't ever sell your last one.
I have 2 of each. I have 2 of each just in case something happens. Like this is a weathered Explorer. I don't know if you can see. You can't see it, but there's so many scuffs. But I love it. This is traveled to as many book signings as I have since RavenCon. So it's wow, it's a lot. So it's kind of neat. So there's great energy on this with all the people who have interacted with it. It's neat, and it's symbolic.
Let me ask you this:
Rome hop the book and then going all these places. It's really cool.
Michael, let me ask you this, and then turn the question to each of us.
Yeah.
You just choose who's ever next that you want to pass it to, and they'll do the same till we all go around here.
Okay.
What's your weak point? What do you need to shore up or get better at when it comes to engaging your readers in person?
Engaging in person.
And not only do what do you need to do to improve, but how are you going to go about that?
How am I going to go about it? It's not so much like I'm constantly I lost my voice at a con once. I used to Danny, I've got the same issue. I'm constantly like losing my voice. So I don't know what that is. I was trying to ask some other authors who are also teachers who like talk constantly.
I can help you with that.
Like what do you have a suggestion on how to keep your voice?
Yeah, here's what you do.
Yeah.
First of all, go research singing lessons on YouTube. Watch the free videos. Look at the vocal warm-ups. in particular.
Okay.
The same vocal warm-ups, actors do them. If you're going to be spending all day at a con, you're going to do them too. You're also going to watch what you're eating and drinking, because certain things will constrict the vocal cords. Be prepared with some nice hot tea and that kind of stuff.
Honey.
But basically, with honey. Go take a look at singers. Learn their vocal warm-ups to do for 10 minutes before you go out on the floor each morning, and you'll feel like an idiot going zzz, or blah, 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 blah. But it loosens everything. It warms up your vocal cords, and then make sure you take those breaks you need. Watch out for certain foods that constrict your vocal cords, etc. So it's just the same thing for a singer, and that's the easy way. Just go take some singing lessons, but it's actually just vocal lessons you're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
So what else is your weak points, and how are you going to address them?
Well, my hardest thing is I really like the in-person stuff, and I'm having my biggest trouble is trying to translate that to the digital world. So it's kind of I can't really think of like something, because I really like the in-person stuff that I do, and how it goes, and I feel like I got my system. It's just a matter of like being able to find and connect with new people online. So that's kind of, I don't know. So it's like talking on the phone with someone versus texting with them.
Right.
That's what it feels like, and I can get passionate, and I got props, and I got all this stuff.
Have you thought about having your manager record you?
Yeah, and so I think what I'm gonna do is, and I'm glad you asked me this question, because I'm like going through the process of realization as I'm talking about it. But what I have at my table is like I try to create like this sensation of exclusivity, and like I have, for instance, like this is like my exclusive bookmarks I have, so it's only at the table, right? And how do I create an a feeling of exclusivity on my different platforms online? So, yeah.
Okay. It's a backwards answer here.
Yeah.
First of all, you go create a new thing. Go to Patreon. Go to Patreon.
Okay.
Create a Patreon account. So now you're going to start pointing when you post on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and it's not specifically I've got a book reading, or I've got a convention, or I've got Write Night, or whatever. You point people to your Patreon. Patreon allows you to create exclusive content for the people supporting you. Even if they're only throwing $1 a month, and yeah, they are throwing something. But this allows you, hey, if you're doing this much a month, I'm going to send you this. But then you could do exclusive videos just for those people, who only the people supporting you are getting it. Because frankly, if somebody online sees your book and wants your book, they're going to go buy it. If they want more of Michael personal interaction, this is a great way to do it. This gives you your true hardcore fans. And don't be disappointed or surprised if you got 3 or 7. But then again, you've got enough personality, charm, and natural charisma. You might do very well on that. And beyond that, there's all kinds of debates with Patreon. Should you put up a $1, $5, $10, $20, $25, $50, $75, $100, or should you just put up a $1 one? And everybody, because you can sign up for more. So from there, that's another conversation. But this is a great way, like, hey, if you're throwing me $5 a month, I'm going to send you one of these exclusive bookmarks.
Yeah.
That's your table. That's the exclusivity now. That's
interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, little things like, hey, for $1, a heartfelt thank you, but you get access to the content there. For $5, freaking you get whatever bookmark I come up with that month. For
$20, you get a visit.
For $100,
how you doing?
You get a signed lithograph of the cover.
I like that. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, and you make it to where they want to. They're like, oh, okay, well, shoot, I was going to buy merch anyway. And you can. It's a great way to test out what's popular.
That is true. That is true.
Keep in mind, if you're supporting at $20, you're getting a lithograph. If they're giving $20 a month, is that only the first month that they do it? They get it? And also keep in mind, something like Patreon, even if you're giving nothing, they're not signing up to support you on that to get something free. That's strictly bonus.
They're just to support you. Yep.
What I'd recommend is that is your exclusivity. So dollar, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Sending out physical objects creates an extra burden of work, time, and cost to you. But saying, hey, if you're supporting at $20, I am sending you an exclusive video, posting it private to YouTube where only you can access it, answering 3 questions.
Yeah.
Now this creates that personal thing, and it's something you can do that costs you nothing. Which I'm so sorry for anybody listening or viewing that's like, wait a minute, I'm giving you money, you're doing stuff that's free? Yes, because our time is money. And go ahead, Aaron.
The big thing is we lose money everywhere else, and it's loss leaders. It's kind of like McDonald's. They don't make any money on the burgers. They make money on the sodas and the fries. We don't make any money on our books. We just don't. It's kind of like the record labels. The sales on the album itself is minimal. Where they make their money is on their appearances, the tours, things to that effect. And then they go out and they hit the radio stations. They're not paid for their time at the radio station, but they're hitting 50, 60, 100 of them a year. Michael goes to a con. He pays money to sit at a con. That's money that's sunk in. And all this does is get a little of that back so he can do those kind of things. And I know I'm a broken record when I say, hey, this is a business, but if we're losing money on it, we're going to stop. We love it. We absolutely do. But we've got spouses, we've got moms, we got a manager that we got to support, roommates, that kind of thing. And they go, hey, friggin', you're going to lose $100 on this. Why are we doing it?
If I may. And Michael, I'm going to jump off of you after I read this comment because, first of all, I'm just thrilled to be able to help you with anything because you really have it together compared to me. So I'm happy to do that. But then I want to pop over because we only got 10 minutes left. But I want to read this comment, then jump to somebody else. Word says mine, meaning their Patreon, does $1 for everything I write, with higher tiers getting special perks. And that's not a bad idea either. You know, if you're supporting $1, maybe you send them an ebook, because that's free to you and it just takes time and a couple clicks. Or maybe the higher. Again, that's up to you. One thing I learned from many Kickstarter campaigns: avoid the physical. Shipping is brutal. Truth. And to do it on Patreon, which is like a constant ongoing Kickstarter.
Wow. Yeah.
Danny says giving back love, but you do need to keep an eye on that bottom line. LOL. She says knowing hers is super red. Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to with the advice to you on this particular thing is you've done your bookmarks. You know what they cost you, and you know that you're handing out 28 cents or $2.80 for free because somebody's talking to you. And that's an investment on your part. That's the hook and the bait to reel that fish in. And that's just a business truth. Mm-hmm. Now, let me jump over here. Michael, if we have more time, I'm so coming back to you if you have anything else. Because, like I said, I'm just...
Oh, no. Y'all have been very helpful and given me a lot to think about. So thank you especially for the Patreon advice, because it's something I've looked at, but I've felt too nervous to
we can't
explore yet.
Undersell ourselves, and that's a lesson we've all learned from you. As you said, be your own biggest fan, have confidence in your product. Aaron, what's your weak point when engaging with people head on, and how can you work to fix it?
Well, the big thing is I have to have more product out there in order to do it. I've got the articles and things like that, but I need product.
Hard to sell those at a con.
Exactly. Well, friggin' not only from a quantitative standpoint of, I've got 3 books or whatever. Mm-hmm. I can't sell the articles. They're already out there on free. So, even if I'm sitting at a table and I've got 100 books sitting there and I'm engaging everybody and I break even, that's fine. But when's the next book coming out? And I've got to have an answer for that. I can't be like Tempe and go, oh, well, friggin', here's my schedule through 2027.
Aaron, I'm going to say you may be wrong on this. I have seen people go to conventions with one book on their table. I saw Michael going to conventions with one book on his table and doing fine. I mentioned my other friend, Robert.
Oh, no, it's not necessarily that what I mean. I mean, it's the secondary one.
I got you. There's follow-up on this.
Oh, okay.
So one book is no problem sitting on your table. The answer to that next question of when's the next book coming out is, I'm in the process of writing now. Then I have to go through getting a cover artist, getting cover art, getting an editor. So it's hard to pinpoint that. But let me tell you about this. And hold your book.
Well, and I've got to hit my Patreon up. I'm hoping to save up enough to afford one of Michael's covers. That kind of thing. Well, we support each other. Yeah, I got to pay my manager. I got to freaking get over to freaking Conquest Publishing and freaking set up a book signing deals.
Yeah, actually,
all these are all part of the business stuff.
You know what? That's a fair point, John. If you are still listening and watching, so group book signing for Write Night and then a live broadcast from Jersey Cards and Comics once this whole situation is done. That sounds like a reasonable thing. And John, you'll definitely join us there and talk about the comic side of things, and we'll make sure the topic is fitting for that. Some Saturday, John says yes.
He said yes.
Yeah.
So, rock on.
Cool,
Aaron, do you have more of this?
No, that was the big thing. It's one of those... remembering that I am selling something, and it's not that I'm selling what's in front of you. I'm selling the and fries and the drink with it. It's great to be there. I want to engage with people. I want to talk about what I'm working on, but I don't want to just offer them a pipe dream 2 to 5 years in the future. I want to go, oh yeah, friggin' this one's currently in the editing stage. This one, I've got this one fine-tuned, edited, and just waiting on cover art. The next one's edited and prepped. Pulling from that Tempe model of, she's got a couple already with her editor and prepped for release. That's where I need to work on it. It's just...
Well, that's what we're here for, to kick each other in the butt when we need it and encourage each other when we don't need the kick in the butt. So, and I've definitely harassed you enough about, hey, you're writing? So...
Oh, yeah. No. Friggin' another 1,500, 2,000 words today.
Hey.
Really? Very good, man. Well done.
Nice. That's good. That's good speed.
It's better than 3 weeks ago. That's for damn sure.
Oh, yeah.
It's, okay, so what are you doing to fix all this?
The big one's writing. Once it's writing, I've got the stuff there. It's just staying in the same vein and keep moving forward. You just got to keep plugging in the right direction, because the problem is that I wasn't writing, so therefore there was no second book. But if you're writing, the second book and third book and so on and so forth are coming. Yeah. And then going, okay, what are the lessons you guys learned, and then applying them out there. Okay. We had talked about like Silver and Smith and so forth. I've started plugging away at a secondary project within the Ships of Valor universe, Icarus Black and the such and such and such and such.
Thank you,
but
Tracy.
It's kind of a precursor story.
Icarus Black, I like the name.
Yeah,
just the name alone.
That was. Oh, go ahead.
No, just the name alone. And when you're done, pass it right down to Tempe. We're running low on time.
Okay. Yep. No, but doing that one, coming up with a good. Okay, that's a great catcher title. And then where am I going to go? And then using that the Lester Dent philosophy of, hey, these 3 things are what I'm going to hit. Keep it short, keep it simple, but keep it inside that same universe that I've already built. To you, Tempe.
Yeah, I've got to work on getting people pulled over into the first book. Once they get into the first book, I don't have any problems with the sales with the rest of them. They just come, they come along. The main question they want to know is, when's the next one coming? And I get messages like that all week. People on Facebook and private messaging asking all the time. I have printed these up but I haven't had a chance to use them. I'm gonna put them on my table, and it says, "What sort of Fins Fey fuckery is this?" And then the book stuff is on the back.
Nice.
So it's just a blank card, and somebody just picks it up, sticks it in their purse or whatever. When they get home, they'll go, "Oh." And I thought maybe even if I could just slip them down into people's bags when they walked by. It's like, where did this come from?
Well,
that might be kind of fun.
Every time you sell something with your purveyor stuff, you could drop one in.
Yeah.
And then they'll be
something you may want to...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Travis. Something you may want to do is on the what Fins Fey fuckery is this? Friggin' leave yourself a little blank space down at the bottom. That way you can friggin' take a metallic pen and sign them as you hand them out.
That's a good idea. Yeah. And actually, I have gotten better since the COVID stuff where we're stuck at home. I've actually started doing more online stuff, and that's stuff I've never done before. Yeah. I've done book readings. We did some Zoom stuff with some other writers. I actually have a YouTube channel thanks to Michael now because he didn't know Google's Hangout was gone. I had already made the channel, so I said, hey, I'll load some stuff up on it. And so I've started doing more online stuff like that and getting some pretty good, feedback from that kind of stuff. So, it's just kind of adjusting and moving along that way. So
very good.
So
very good.
Yeah.
It sounds like we all have a plan, and that's the important thing. Just keep moving forward. Recognizing where we want to strengthen ourselves really helps. And the bottom line is, whether it's the creative side or the technical side, we want to engage our viewers. We might mention the business side, we might mention the costs, but the bottom line is, for me at least, I'm writing to bring something to somebody else's life. I want to share this thing, this concept, this idea, this story, this character, whatever it is, with other people. It's a joy I have. And if I can't share that joy, which means engaging with my reader, whether it's creatively or technically, then I'm not getting what I wanted out of this. So, all I can say to everybody out there writing is, first and foremost, write. Just keep swimming, to quote Dory. And you'll get there. The rest, you can learn. You can't do any of it if you don't write, though. And
Perfectly.
Keep yourself open to learning new things. I mean, Michael, who we present as our marketing guru, learned something tonight from what he pointed at here. So this is a joy. I will point out our different levels of experience. Aaron with one book, but been doing technical writing for 25 years. Tempe, who started 12 to 18 months ago and has 4 out, 8 written. Michael, who's been writing since he was 9. Myself, who's been writing but didn't publish till 7. We have this vast level of experience on very different levels in very different places, and we can each learn from each other. And it's a beautiful thing. Guys, thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging out. If you're on the podcast, you ever want to join us live, Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk. And if you're here live and you missed something, don't forget it's available on podcast, it's available on YouTube, it's available on Twitch as a highlight later. Everybody, you have a great night. We got some outro music. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks for coming.
Hold on. There it is.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Night. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right night.